Social movements have always been a major threat to the oppressive and authoritarian regimes. Throughout history, such movements have brought an end to oppressive and authoritarian regimes and brought about a change. And this is the phenomenon that has been observed in many periods of the world history. Many examples have borne witness to this, and therefore, in the countries where tensions are high, rulers often try to prevent citizens from coming together to exercise one of their most democratic rights, the right to protest. It is always motivated by the fear and anxiety, and according to local sources, there has been great fear and panic in the Kremlin palace in recent days. The reason for this fear is growing prevalence of social movements. When the Russian Federation launched the project of invading Ukraine, many sensible Russian citizens wanted to not to be part of this war, and also many Russian citizens wanting to show that the Russian people are not a party to this war, took the streets to demand that the Russian leadership renounce its aggressive stance. However, authoritarian governments don't allow such activities, and the Putin administration did not allow it either. And common-sense Russian citizens are pushing the limits. A recent demonstration is reported to have had a major impact in Moscow. So let's take a look at these developments together. As the Pioneer team, we continue to bring you all developments related to Russia and Ukraine. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our daily reports. We also read all of your comments on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments, and let's start if you are ready. The Pioneer reports. The battle between the Russian armed forces and the Ukrainian armed forces continues unabated on the front line. While the Ukrainian armed forces are pushing all borders to liberate their country from the occupation of another country, the Russian armed forces are fighting in unfamiliar territory due to the expansionist policies of their heads of state. Well, beyond these frontline clashes, there is also a psychological war going on, and Ukraine is in an advantageous position in this respect. The Ukrainian citizens have great confidence in their president, Vladimir Zelensky, and support the Ukrainian armed forces' struggle to end the Russian occupation. For Russia, however, the situation is not rosy. It is a great anger and discontent among the Russian people. In other words, the Russian Federation is at a disadvantage in the psychological warfare going on behind the front lines. So previously, the Russian army has caused accidents targeting civilian settlements on the Russian borders. This has caused great anxiety and discomfort among the Russian population. Moreover, Russian air defense systems had not been successful in preventing attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces. The Russian intelligence was also inadequate and failed to prevent sabotage activities inside the country on several occasions, and these situations have caused a loss of confidence and discomfort among the Russian public. Nevertheless, the Russian people want to express that they don't want war. However, the Russian leadership is blocking this desire of the Russian people and insisting on the decisions to continue the war. Recently, the Russian people organized a big demonstration for this reason. It was a platform for the people to express their reactions and their anti-war sentiments. The roots of this reaction run deep, and the reason why the Russian people took the streets this time starts with the tragic story of oppressive Grinov. Well, Grinov is actually a political prisoner, and the reason behind his arrest is his reaction to the Russian-Ukrainian war. Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, had the activist Grinov arrested during the demonstration at the beginning of the war. Since then, Grinov has been in prison for a long time. Moreover, his family and the loved ones have not heard from him for a long time. Recently, Russian citizens once again took the streets demanding freedom for Grinov. This is just one example of Grinov's story and can be seen as a reflection of the Russian people's quest for justice and freedom. Recently, Russian citizens have allegedly organized a series of protests, mainly in major cities such as Moscow and St. Petersburg, demanding Grinov's release and an immediate end to the war. However, it is known that the Russian administration does not welcome the protests. During these protests, Russian citizens were subjected to the violence by the Russian police, and many people were arrested. It is stated that the protests indicate a growing unrest in some segments of the society, growing public anxiety anxiety in Russia is seen as a harbinger of growing opposition to the government's war policies. There are quite remarkable allegations about Grinov. It is claimed that Grinov, who started his protests in the years that the war started, was frequently followed and threatened by the Russian intelligence. It is even reported that Grinov was warned from the first days of the anti-war demonstrations, but he was arrested for participating in the demonstrations without heeding these warnings. Demonstrators who claim that they have not heard from Grinov for a long time have conveyed some remarkable information to the press sources, and this information is as follows. Grinov was one of the people who took the first step to end this war. Yes, he participated in demonstrations, but he never moved away from peace. Even when the police attacked him, he remained peaceful. His family and friends have not heard from him for a long time, and Grinov is sick. He needs medication, and this has been reported to the prison authorities for some time, but so far they had not reported that Grinov's needs are being met. Everyone is very worried. We will continue our protests until hear good news from Grinov. Well, as you can see, activist Alexei Grinov is a very popular figure among the anti-war activists, but we can say that his sphere of influence is wide. It is possible to say that the attitude of the Russian Federation administration towards Grinov stems from this wide sphere of influence. Russian citizens say that the actions for Grinov will continue, but what are the consequences of these actions? As you may remember, we recently shared information about the funeral of the Russian opposition leader Navalny. Navalny's funeral was the scene of protests and demonstrations. The Putin administration took very harsh measures against the participants of these demonstrations and signed another scandal. Vladimir Putin, president of the Russian Federation, once again showed his authoritarian rule and identified the young men who attended Navalny's funeral. It was decided to send these young men to the front line. This is quite remarkable and was met with a huge reaction. The Russian citizens who attended Navalny's funeral already did not want war and supported Navalny. Nevertheless, Russian leader Vladimir Putin seems to be mocking Russian citizens by sending them to the war. It is quite telling that the day after Navalny's funeral and the Putin's orders were carried out and military services orders arrived in the homes of those who participated in the demonstration in the coming. Well, it's quite telling that the day after Navalny's funeral, Putin's orders were carried out and the military service orders arrived at the homes of those who participated in the demonstration in the morning. This suggests that Putin sees Navalny's funeral as an opportunity to force his people into war. So now it's your turn. What do you think? How do you interpret the protests in Russia? And do the reactions of the Russian people influence the decisions of the Putin administration? What do you think about the Russian leader Putin's decision on conscription? What do you think about the recent events in Russia? Let me know in the comments, because you know that I read and I care about all of you.